And welcome to a new edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Obviously, I'm Rob Reigns. This is not Mike Reigns with us. He's away this week. So we have a pinch hitter right off the bat. David Solomon is going to join us on this week's edition of the podcast. David, of course, works with us at STL Sports Page, providing all the audio content on the site after all the Cardinals home games and news conferences and things like that. And David, everybody who met you at Viviano's last week at our season opening party, they won't be surprised to see your face, but you might be a new face to other people who are tuning in to this podcast. So welcome, and thanks for pinch hitting for Mike.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. That was a blast at Viviano's. It was fun even seeing some of you all who were there at the ballpark over the first week of the season. So it's always great to come together, do good, and talk baseball.
Absolutely. We had a great time, and thanks to everybody who showed up at the party, and you could see all the pictures and everything on the website. And thanks to Viviano's Italian restaurant out in Fenton too. Great food. We had more than one person tell us how great the food was. They haven't been to an event like that with such great food, so we appreciate all of their support, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again sometime soon, because I think it's always good to get Cardinal fans together and talk baseball. And I think by and large, everybody was happy about the team and the direction that it's headed. And now we've had a good first week of the season. But we do have to start off, of course, with some news that happened after we all left the ballpark on Wednesday afternoon. We don't know really a whole lot of details about this yet, except that Mason Wynn was involved in what apparently was a minor car accident after the ball game. We did receive a statement from the Cardinals. That's really all we know. I'm going to read the statement from the Cardinals, two paragraphs. It says, following today's game, which was on Wednesday, Mason Wynn was involved in a single car accident on Interstate 64, Highway 40 due to wet pavement. Mason, who was alone in the vehicle, was attended to by local police and Cardinal security and medical staff. He was examined at a nearby hospital, suffered no serious injuries. We are grateful that he is okay and that the first responders in our community who helped Mason tonight. And that's really all we know. We don't know any details of the accident. We don't know exactly where it was. We all just talked to Mason, after the game, because of course he had the game-winning hit to, bloop single into right field. They get the walk-off win in the 11th inning over the Mets, and then it just goes to show you how quickly things can change. You just never know.
Oh, yeah. In fact, when you hear car accident and Cardinals after a game, it can bring back a little PTSD. Of course, you can forget basically Josh Hancock with 2 in a week, but I can assure you, and Rob, you've seen this as well, the culture in that clubhouse has really changed really since Josh Hancock passed away almost 20 years. For example, when I first started, and obviously when you first started, you would see guys and they'd be pounding beers after a game, but Mason Wynn, you and I could both attest to this. His most common beverage of choice is a Fitz's soda. So I just felt like I wanted to clarify that, because this isn't necessarily like you would think, 20 years ago, where guys were getting back after, let's just say, post-game happy hour.
Well, and we don't know what happened. We don't know where on Highway 40, 64
Right.
the accident occurred. We don't know what the circumstances were.
But there was rain. There was rain on the road.
It was raining at the time when I left the ballpark. It was raining, so those things can happen very, very easily, But so I don't think we'll get any more information about this on Thursday because the Cardinals have the day off. They are flying to Detroit on Thursday afternoon, so probably until Mason has a chance to speak to the media in Detroit before the ball game on Friday is when we'll get more information about exactly what happened. But the good news, the bottom line, is that he's okay and was not a serious accident, and he's okay. Yeah, the other car accident, of course, even though it didn't have anything to do with the team or the season because it was in the off season, but when you think of car accidents to the Cardinals, you can't help but think about Oscar Taveras and the fatal car wreck that he was involved in the Dominican Republic. So yeah, you're right. The Cardinals do have a little bit of a different connection with car accidents maybe than some other teams.
Oh, absolutely. And it would be a blow too to lose Wynn, because even before he had the game-winning hit on Wednesday against the Mets, he was still making an impact on games with his defense. And anyone else you put at that shortstop position, whether it's Thomas Ajayci, whether you move JJ Weatherholt over, I don't even think Fermin's more than an emergency option myself. But regardless, that would be a massive decline, even if, as Tony La Russa famously said about Yadier Molina, even if Mason Wynn hit 0 for the season, he would still be a winning influence just with his defense alone.
Absolutely. He made some terrific plays, especially in that series against the Mets. Cardinals win 2 out of 3 against the Mets, go 4-2 on the homestand. Your overall thoughts about the first week of the season?
I don't know if I could have scripted it like that. It's not necessarily the result that surprised me. I thought the pitching would be ahead of the offense and the field players. And early on, while there were, mixed bag, obviously one start doesn't define a season, but very promising start to the season by Andre Palante. I've been impressed by what Matthew Liberatore has been able to do over his first couple starts. And Michael McGreevy, he's someone who I felt like arguably could have been the best leader on the pitching staff last year as a rookie. And I know it's just one start, but he looks like he continues to make strides. So you're getting that bullpen still deciding itself. But I was most impressed by the way the team was able to string runs together. Now, no one's going to mistake them for the 27 Yankees or the 95 Indians or even the 04 Cardinals. But nonetheless, finding ways, whether it's situational hitting, seeing signs of life from Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, especially. If I were a fan going down, buying tickets at Busch Stadium, I would be more enthused to do that than any time since 2022.
Yeah, there's always some life to the team and some changes, and I think the audience, and we talked about this at the party at Viviano's. I think the fans were ready for a change, and I think they've embraced it because I think they were hoping that the things would be different. And when you look through the first turn through the starting rotation, as you mentioned, really the only guy who had a bad start was Dustin May, who's your big free agent acquisition from Boston. And I thought, based on what guys did in spring training, so we'll see how May comes out in his next start. Leahy was okay, but not great. So, but we'll see we'll see what he does too. But I thought one of the biggest differences in this club between last year and this year was going to be the starting pitching. So, we'll see if that turns out to be the case. But I think especially you have to be encouraged by Liberatore, one run in each of his 2 starts, and that run coming on a home run to a left-handed batter, Juan Soto in the Mets case on Wednesday. So, that's going to happen. Those guys are good hitters, but I think, you 5, 6, 7 innings in one run. I think you'll take that almost every day if you're a starting pitcher.
Oh, absolutely. And this year it was just addition by subtraction. The best thing I could say about this starting rotation, I know Dustin May's a veteran, but that's more a reclamation project. You just don't have retreads. Everyone in this rotation has at least some upside.
And speaking of upside, I think we saw that in the first week from the Cardinals' newest player, J.J. Weatherholt. Started opening day at second base, started hitting leadoff. What's he do? Hits a home run in his first game, hits a walk-off hit in his second game. First player in MLB history to do both of those things in their first 2 games. And I think continued after those 2 games to have a very solid week. I don't think any of us who have been around him the last couple of years in the minor leagues, have been around him in spring training, I don't think anybody's surprised by that performance, but until you get on that stage, you don't really know. I mean, he had a bad start to the AA season in Springfield last year. Obviously, overcame that, but encouraging to see him get off to such a good start.
Yes, and we know 1 week does not make a season. I mean, Jordan Walker was hot through 1 week as a rookie in 2023, but so far it looks like JJ's coming exactly as advertised. I know you've had many more chances to go down and see him in the minor leagues than I have. But everything, whether it's the approach at the plate, defensively, and look, nobody's mistaken him for Mason Wynn defensively, but at least he can hold his own, and it's not like putting Skip Schumacher at second base with no experience in the 09 season. And then just the overall swagger, he feels like he belongs. If he didn't look every bit as young as he does, you would not necessarily think he's a rookie by how he carries himself.
Yeah, he's the same age as Jordan Walker, right?
Right. All of a wise old age of 24, just about.
Yeah, be 24 later this season. But I think and it does show the difference. Just comparing those 2 prospects, you do see the difference between players drafted out of high school who then have to develop in the minor leagues, and then players drafted out of a major university like West Virginia, where of course Victor Scott II was from, as well as J.J. Weatherholt. And also don't forget, I mean, he's the product of a couple of bad seasons because the Cardinals got him with the 7th overall pick in the draft a couple of years ago, highest they've drafted in 20 something years, because they had a poor season the year before. So Luckily, we all said how important that draft pick was going into that draft, and that you basically couldn't screw it up because you didn't know. Of course, at that time, you said, "When will we get another pick like that?" Well, then the next year you get the 5th overall pick. So, you took Liam Doyle. So I think that they did. I think hit basically, for lack of a better cliche, hit a home run with that selection.
Oh, absolutely. And Weatherholt, even that was a blessing, because if JJ Weatherholt had been healthy his final year of college, there is no way he would have fell to the Cardinals when they
He
were
was
picking
in,
at 7.
even with the injury, he was in the conversation to go 1-1 to Cleveland. So
Yeah.
yeah, so they got lucky, but they took advantage of the opportunity, and I think you're going to see the fruits of his labor for a long time. There's even been some reports out there that the Cardinals are entertaining the idea of signing him to a long-term contract. You've seen a couple of clubs, Milwaukee and Seattle, have already signed guys this week to minor league deals that aren't to major league contracts for several years, lots and lots of money, and they're not even in the big leagues yet. So we'll see where that goes. That the Cardinals have a history of signing guys to contract extensions, but they usually have more than a week's experience in the big leagues when they do that.
True, but when's the last time we've seen someone as talented with the pedigree as JJ Weatherholt in the modern climate? I mean, I know Albert hit the scene running, but I don't think anyone, a former 9th round draft pick, I don't think anyone was ready to hand Albert Pujols a contract extension after 1 week in the big leagues. This is almost unprecedented from the Cardinals' perspective. Plus, you factor in the modern economic climate, and you take him through 3 runs of arbitration. If he continues on this path, you don't know what you're going to pay, and then to first have to sign him. Plus, by waiting until after he debuted, unlike what the Pirates might be doing with their star prospect, Connor Griffin, the Cardinals still remain eligible for all the incentives if JJ wins Rookie of the Year or has a top 3 MVP finish the next 3 years. The Cardinals can get an extra compensatory draft pick,
which we know are very valuable to them. And I think the one thing
yeah.
that's interesting about JJ's case too is the fact that part of the negotiations in the CBA that's going to come up this winter, one of the suggestions I've heard is that the players will use, or the owners will use as a bargaining chip to try to get the players to agree to a salary cap, is that they'll reduce the eligibility for free agency by a year. Because you only have to have 5 years of experience instead of 6. So you get a player signed up for a long-term contract. Not only could you buy out, the current situation with arbitration and free agency, but you might be giving yourself a break if they change the rules in the new CBA. We don't know what that's going to be yet.
Yeah, that's going to be a wild ride, one that I'm going to be the first to admit I'm not looking forward to, given recent history and still scarred by the strike of 94 into 95. But there's definitely a need for a salary floor, if not a salary cap as well. And by getting ahead of the deal, at the very least, even if it's a deal that wouldn't be allowed under the new CBA, why not grandfather him or anyone else you think has that much promise in?
Well, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. The other thing I think that was a big topic of conversation the first week of the season was the lineup construction that Ollie Marmol kind of surprised us with on opening day, with having Mason Wynn batting cleanup. And I think you can talk about it a couple different ways, and I'm curious for your thoughts on it. I don't have a problem with Ivan Herrera hitting second. I like him hitting second, but I just don't see Mason Wynn being a cleanup hitter. And I know that probably the part of the problem when you look at this lineup is, until you get Gorman or Walker established as a legitimate, they're going to play well all season, I don't think you've got a bona fide cleanup hitter on this roster.
That's exactly what I was thinking, especially if you want to keep the lineup constructed in the 3-batter minimum era, as Ollie does, alternating lefty-righty, and you have 5 lefties who are basically going to play regularly. If you keep that mix, if you want, obviously JJ is going to be your leadoff hitter. If you want Alec Burleson, the number 3 hitter, you're thinking, okay, who's the best threat to protect Burley? That's Ivan Herrera. Okay, there's your number 2 hitter. And I tend to think that Mason Wynn batting cleanup isn't necessarily a ringing endorsement that, okay, here's our best option to drive in runs, if that's how Ollie Marmol's thinking. It's Ollie probably thinking, well, I want to have Ivan second. Jordan's not ready. No offense, but I don't think Pedro Paez would exactly qualify as a cleanup hitter. Maybe in some world, or Ramon Urias or whoever the right-handed bat might be in the lineup. So it almost feels like it's a cleanup hitter by default in Mason Wynn. And I'm just worried. I know he delivered the walk-off blue pit yesterday. That's Wednesday if you're watching it this a little later on.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd hate to see if Mason, I don't want to see him trying to press. He
Right.
just needs to focus on making solid contact. I mean, maybe he can develop a Brandon Phillips mentality in the cleanup spot, where Brandon Phillips basically said, screw it. I don't care about average. I don't care about saber metrics, my advanced metrics. I'm a cleanup hitter. My job is driving runs, and that's all I care about is my RBIs.
Yeah, and I'm hoping too. I think maybe by having a little bit more experience now, maybe like if you tried this a year ago, you might have had different results. And I'm not, saying, obviously Mason has struggled offensively. What was his fourth hit yesterday or on Wednesday was of the first 6 games of the season. But I don't think he's necessarily going to say, because I'm hitting fourth, I have to try to hit every ball out of the ballpark. Where I think he kind of fell into that trap a little bit a year ago, even when he was hitting leadoff. So maybe, you just have to say, okay, he's one of the hitters in the lineup, and there's, not really necessarily take away that whole cleanup thing. Although he said, when we were talking to him on Wednesday after the game, if he was hitting 350 to the first week of the season, nobody would care that he's batting fourth.
Oh, exactly. And Mason, I'll give him credit. He said the right things. It reminded me of what Tommy Pham said a few years back, that, lineup, where you bat in the lineup doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He takes the same approach. So I don't think necessarily Mason will be swinging for the fences because he's a cleanup hitter. My fears more come because that was kind of the nature or the trap he had fallen into last season, regardless of where he was batting.
The other part of the ball club I wanted to break down a little bit after the first week of the season, and that's the bullpen. And the first weekend series against Tampa Bay. I think the one word you have to use to describe the bullpen was awful, because they just did not perform well and give up 15 runs or 13 runs. I don't have the number in front of me in those 3 games. But then they flipped the switch against the Mets and pitched great and didn't allow a run. And I really think it was a matter of getting everybody back into the proper slot. It just seemed like that first weekend, everybody was pitching out of sync. They weren't in the spot where we really expected them to be used. And then against the Mets, they did that, where you turned the ball over to Romero or O'Brien when he had the chance in the late innings.
And it's the first week of the season. Bullpens are settling in. It was important to note during that Rays series, the Rays had their own bullpen problems. In fact, their projected closer, Griffin Jacks, is still struggling. So I just think it's important, especially when it comes to pitching the first week of the season, to remember small sample size. But that said, the last thing you want to see, and I think the Cardinals have avoided this, is you don't want to see a high leverage reliever have a lot of struggles early, because we've seen it time and time again, whether it was Mitchell Boggs,
Greg Holland,
him, or even Ryan Franklin. Sometimes if a high leverage guy blows 2 or 3 games early, it can just snowball and wreck the season, if not more.
Right. And there's nothing more deflating than having a lead and losing it in the late innings. We all know that for a fact. That's the pressure that's on those closers in that situation. Your thoughts on the first week for Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman? We mentioned him a little bit a minute ago, but
I mean, we have to see if they can sustain it, because we've seen hot stretches from them before. But if this is the kind of standard for Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker moving forward, I'll be very happy for it. Look, Nolan Gorman's never going to be a 300 hitter. He's probably not going to be a 260, 270 hitter in the modern climate. But if Gorman can just hit somewhere in the 230 to 250 range, draw some walks, and be good for that key bomb or 2 a week, you've got what you're looking for in Gorman. And with Jordan Walker, it's about the consistency. I know I saw a pitch, I think it was yesterday, where, it was an inside pitch. It was called a strike, but he held up. I was perfectly fine with him taking the strike out there, because it showed that he was showing plate discipline. He saw, okay, this is a pitch. I don't think I can do much with it. This is just going to be a jam job that's either going to be a weak pop out, ground out, or a strikeout. I would rather see the occasional strikeout looking and knowing that Jordan Walker, this can apply to Gorman too, but seeing that Jordan Walker is identifying the strike zone, of identifying pitches he can do damage with, versus trying to be a hero and make something out of nothing.
You're watching this week's edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, David Solomon filling in for Mike Reigns, pinch hitting this week. David, of course, as we mentioned, does all the audio work for us on the website, getting the interviews after the ball games, the news conferences. Been around covering this team as well as all of St. Louis sports for a long time. Do want to encourage you to check out all the stories and everything that we have on the website. And of course, the newest part of the site is our merchandise page. We got a lot of neat items coming up. Sally's worked really hard on all these, and everybody who's bought a hat or a t-shirt or a coffee mug has really liked it. And I think we have a lot of neat new items out there. And my favorite one is our new kind of slogan that we've come up with, which is do good, have fun, watch baseball. So I think everybody, it's a good way to go. So follow that advice, and you'll have a good, happy, long season. Speaking of getting off to a good start to the season, I do want to mention one guy in the minor leagues, and that's Jimmy Crooks. People kind of had Mr. Pages has not had a great week offensively either, but Crooks is 4 for 4 on Wednesday down at Memphis. He has his third home run in 5 games. In fact, he bats left-handed. It's working against him in terms of being up here as a major league option behind the plate, but he keeps doing that much longer at Memphis. They're going to maybe force their hand a little bit. And the other part I want to mention too is this is where Memphis has been playing for a week. They're already 5-0 to start the season, but all the other Cardinal minor league clubs, the full season affiliates, will get their start this week, either Thursday night or Friday night. So we put together a little roundup of where all the Cardinals' top prospects are beginning of the season. That's Rainiel Rodriguez in the pit photo. He's going to be starting at Peoria. So they've kind of sprinkled these guys between Memphis, Peoria, Springfield, and Palm Beach, so you can get a rundown of where all those guys are going to be to start the season. A lot of new faces because of all the trades that they made at the end of last season or over the winter. So I'm curious to see how these guys do. Plus Liam Doyle and Tanner Franklin, the top 2 guys that got in the draft last year. Doyle will start the year in Springfield, Tanner Franklin in Peoria.
Oh, it's amazing just the difference a year or two can make, because going into a season like last season, when you're somebody like Ali Marmol or even John Mozeliak and Chaim Bloom at the top, if somebody faltered at the big league level, you go down to Memphis. And for the most part, I mean, I know they were keeping McGreevy down there for the first half of the season, but beyond that, and maybe a catcher or two, you go down to Memphis in the past, and it was pretty much you pick your pick of guys who are lottery tickets and guys who were basically 4A players, and that was their ceiling. Think the Michael Cianis of the world.
Yeah, I think there is much more depth, especially on the pitching side in the organization, and a lot of their even top pitching prospects aren't available yet because of their recovering from various injuries over the years. It'll be interesting to see how Richard Fitz and Hunter Dobbins do at Memphis as well. Dobbins on a rehab assignment. Fitz, we're surprised that he was assigned to Memphis to start the season and didn't make the big league ball club. So he's had one start already this season. Will be pitching again this weekend, as well as Quinn Matthews and Bryson Motts and some of the other guys. So obviously we'll keep our tabs on what's going on at the minor league club. We'll also be keeping our tabs on, of course, what happens on this first road trip. Cardinals head out to Detroit, as we mentioned, on Thursday. They'll play Friday night. The weather forecast in Detroit this weekend looks like a lot of rain, a lot of cold weather. So you'll probably safely be watching on television in your comfort of your living room this weekend. Then on to Detroit. The one interesting about on to Washington for 3 games against the Nationals. Weather could be always dicey in this part of this season, up anywhere in the Northeast as well. But the one thing, if the schedule holds and they're able to play all these games, we get to see Jack Flaherty start against the Cardinals on Saturday. That's always fun.
Oh, that'll be fun too. And I'm interested in getting a real good close-up look at Detroit's top prospect who made his debut this year, Kevin McGonigal, as well. That'll be fun. McGonigal versus Weatherholt.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, well, David, we thank you for stepping up and pitching it here for Mike. Thanks to the Drury Hotels, our primary sponsor here on the website, all of our other sponsors as well for keeping all the content on the website, including this podcast, free and available. Don't forget this podcast is available anywhere you get your podcast. If you have not signed up to the YouTube account, please do so. It'll help you notice exactly every time a new podcast drops. Also available on Spotify, Amazon Music, all of those things. And if you're also not available, haven't signed up yet for our weekly newsletter, I encourage you to do that. You can do that on the website as well. So, David, we'll see you at the ballpark. And everybody, remember, do good, have fun, watch baseball. We'll talk to everybody again soon here on Reigns on the Cardinals podcast, STLSportsPage.com.